I was asked if I could put into layman's terms this epigenetic thing and my interpretation of what this means in general. So I was specifically asked this question in terms of what do you think about the resilience gene? So let's talk about it. This is the way that I see it, and I am not a quantum physicist. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a geneticist. I am somebody who is just trying to align in the human condition, and these are the ways that I have come to center in myself. So I will share them with you, and if they apply to you, awesome. And if they don't, that's totally fine too. This is the way that I see this. So epigenetics is a theory that has scientific backing that we are no longer to ask the nature versus nurture question. It is that actually nurture changes nature. So if you are a baby and you are not getting the affection that you need, you have, based on that story or that experience, and a serious possibility of turning off a genetic marker in yourself just to stay safe, just to keep the organism alive. A genetic marker will be turned off that could have been beneficial for the organism, but in order to survive in that environment, it was turned off. And that, what this looks like is, on a physical level, if you're a picture person, is every cell in your body, well, most cells in your body have DNA in them. And DNA are those spindles that you see when you see DNA, right? And what is connecting the ladder basically between them is genes. And the way in which those genes are turned on or turned off. So think of them as light switches, and one side is turned on, one side is turned off. The sequence in which those genes are turned on or turned off are what make you you. So genetically, we're pretty much, we're supposedly very identical. As far as our genes are concerned, being a human. But the expression of those genes is what makes us look different, appear different, act different, actually be different. So when it comes to the resilience gene, it was like a study done saying that people who had this particular marker turned on, because everybody would have this marker, right, in their genetic sequence, that marker that was turned on in that specific way. So say like the light switch in that one was turned on, and that meant that those people who had that turned on and experienced trauma would be more resilient than the next person, right? But the fun thing about epigenetics is that knowing that nurture changes nature, we have the capacity to override that genetic expression by changing the way in which we nurture ourselves and changing the way in which we nurture our minds, which would be the stories that we're telling. So by quantum physicists' perspective, eventually we should be able to get to a point where we're so intact that we would be able to look down from the awareness of ourself that is beyond the body and look at the body and say, okay, turn on all of the switches in which make me the most whole, most aligned, most preserved version of my original self that I came into the world as. Or the self that I wanted to come into the world as, because this is the thing about epigenetics. It's also what's proven is that the stories of the cell, okay? So the cell itself is the simplest form of consciousness. Every cell in your body knows exactly where to go, when to go there, how to go there, how to get there. Things are working on your behalf all day, every day that you have no relationship with, but they have an integral relationship in the existence of you. So in all of those cells is a story. And that story is a story of something in our past. So my grandmother, and if you don't know much about epigenetics, it might actually blow your mind to know that you were in your grandmother's womb at one point as an egg. So what that means is that a female embryo has all of the eggs that she's going to ever have in her entire life by the time she's 5 months in utero. So in that regard, your grandmother being pregnant with your mother, all of the experiences of your grandmother from the time of conception, but even when she was formed as an egg and her grandmother, you know, all of those stories infiltrate the cell. And the cell, the story, if the story continues to be written in the same exact way, is going to continue turning on those genetic markers. So say the story in your family, if you're attracted to my channel, is the narcissist and the codependent, right? And this is just like the downward spiral of the story of the cell that you come into, and your basically all of your cells are written, drenched in this story of your ancestral lineage. Not only are you inheriting the thought forms of that story, you are inheriting the genetic expression of the way that that story changed our nature as a being. So if we want to get back to wholeness, it's almost about writing a whole new story. And with epigenetics, even the idea of epigenetics, we have the capacity to do this. So your DNA is like a blueprint. If your DNA is a light body, so say you just put yourself, oh, let's go here. I did this week with somebody and it feels applicable. If we are just black space, our field is black space, and you're on my channel because you're an empath, what we often feel like is a whole bunch of electricity shooting out into all directions in the universe, being super diffuse, right? And somebody said that to me once, and I actually am going to use it now, because at the time I was like kind of insulted, but he was like, you're like one of those people who, those little not snow globes, but those electricity things when you go to touch them and all of the things come to you. He felt like that about me. And that was really interesting because, one, I was offended. Like, what does that even mean? But he's not wrong. And I think that that's the experience of the nervous system of the empath, is that we probably didn't get the felt nurturing experience that we necessarily needed, and our nervous system is wired to connect to whatever deficit it was that we didn't get when we needed it. And that wiring plugs us into other people more than it plugs us into ourselves. So I did a podcast the other day, and this is what I likened it to. It's like we are all a speck in the kaleidoscope of the masterpiece of divinity. And some of us are a speck where at the center of us blasts out all of our light. Like we're most light in the center, and then we take up the rest of the space in the speck by either our own color or, we let there be spaces for whatever. Other ones of us who are more likely to be, if you're here, the codependent empath, your energy is diffuse in your speck, and you're most colorful along the edges where your nervous system is connecting to other people, and you're not good at actually getting in your guts and connecting to the center of your speck. Which is the place in which you are most grounded, aligned, and powerful. Neither is better or worse. They all make up the masterpiece, which is beautiful, but we are in a position, especially with this information, to transcend how we show up in that kaleidoscope. So we can use epigenetics to do this. That just the thought of epigenetics is like, whoa, okay, if I come from that lineage, and I know that the story that's written in my cells is this very ancient story that, one, it wants to be written through me, but it's already written. So I'm not actually the author of this story. And it's like, sure, it's written. That story is written. But if we want to create a new world, we have to go, okay, so on a genetic level, we have to understand that thought systems are a dense reality. They are patternings that can be felt, seen, distanced ourselves from. And they affect the way in which the body carries the pattern, right? So some people might have a pattern that they can see outside of themselves, but it doesn't live inside of themselves. And some of us come into the planet with this genetically inherited pattern that's living on inside of us. And we're going, oh my God, please stop that pattern that's going on inside of me, because it's waging a war inside of the self. And in some situations, we're one way, in some situations, we're another way. And the point of epigenetics is to go, okay, this is my solid ground. Okay, this is the way I want my blueprint to feel, to look, to act, and I want the thought patterns in which I came into the planet with my cellular memory storing to be, let's just go here, led by the Holy Spirit rather than my ancestral, like the stories that have infiltrated the cells that basically make living on the earth feel like hell. So that's the way I see. Oh, and the thing about the resiliency gene, or the resilience gene, is just that, like, it's no different than any other gene. It's that if you believe that you can turn on a gene, so here we might turn on genes by this. So if we look at it like this, I've been taking adaptogens lately, which I will tell you guys about eventually. But one of the things for me that's felt important in my own healing is that the more we heal, the more we get into the body. And the more we get into the body, the more the body becomes inhabitable. And then we want to nurture the body because we understand it is a sentient being, no different than our garden, no different than our children that we were so intent on, like, breastfeeding or like doing good for. It is a sentient being that is alive on our behalf, right? So to get into the body, we have to nurture it from the outside and give it what it needed, right? So if we can give it adaptogens, if we can give it chiropractic work, if we can give it salt baths, if we can give it something that's going to stimulate our relaxed response, it's gonna relax enough to let a new story be written into it. And when it's relaxed enough to let a new story be written into it, we're going to make one more space, but we are going to be doing things that are going to calm our guts. We're going to be attracted to things that are less inflammatory for the guts. And when we do that, the guts aren't always pressing on our nervous system, making us like out in the world, right? So, and that's something I wanted to say, like, if you feel that diffuse, like almost blue electric, just veins of a nervous system going on in the world being connected to everything else, just pull all of that in, command that all of that come to center on your behalf, right? We have the capability of doing that, and then go, okay, and while I pull in that regard, while I command that all of that energy come to center, I also command that it write a story in my DNA that success is inevitable, that love is inevitable, that the expression of the Holy Spirit is inevitable, to turn on all of the switches in me, which make it possible that I become that which I came to become, rather than move farther away from that which I came here to be, with the stories that I came here to unwrite. I don't want to keep living them. So you can command that energy also change your sequences. And the thing is we're not changing the gene, we're changing the expression of the gene. We're changing whether it's turned on or turned off. Okay. So that sense of our nervous system being wired to everything else, it takes us out of our own will space, our own center. When even this morning, this was my morning, it's my anniversary today. We went out to breakfast and we had the baby, and there was a woman who was clearly mentally unstable, screaming at us that we should have the baby inside. It's a cold day. Basically, she was calling us assholes for like having our baby out. Mind you, he was sleeping, and she was screaming at us to take him home and give him a nap. My old self, I would have either felt like, oh my God, I should feel shame. I should feel her shame. I should feel bad for her, or I should feel shame and I should go take my baby home because, like, if I don't, God's going to punish me by giving me a sick baby because this woman is warning me, blah, blah, blah. No will of my own would have existed in that moment for me. I would have immediately connected to her nervous system and felt the reverberations of that, and not centered all day, wondering if I was the asshole, if she was the asshole, what I could do to make her not be like that, if I'm gonna, if I'm harming my baby, if I'm actually a good mom. I would have been all over the place. And it was astonishing to me that I was like, damn, I am like all here, all centered, and don't care at all that that woman was saying those things to me. And that's just discernment, which is amazing. But it's so much easier to make a discerned choice when we can inhabit the body in a way that we are not getting in the way of the will. And a lot of toxic relationships, a lot of toxicity in foods and in whatever that come into us and make us toxic, take us away from being able to operate in the will in a horizontal fashion in the world. So yeah, we will naturally be called to become cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And then when we think about this and we go, okay, there's the resilience gene. There's a gene for everything, and there's genes for, adaptability. But basically, the point is that we can rewrite the expression of the gene by putting ourselves in situations in which we are nurturing the nature, by ensuring our adaptability to trauma, which is going to be an inevitable reality in life, by putting ourselves in positions of nurture, even if we didn't get them, which is really uncomfortable. I was somebody who did not, don't touch me. I am not a touchy person. It took me years of massage therapy to not want to just whatever. Let's just say that. That was me putting myself in situations that created me to have a different expression of my genes. If you see a picture of me when I'm 18 versus now, you're going to go whoa, that's pretty nuts. It stays, but that's not stays, right? Yeah, there's my little gist on epigenetics. And I hope that this makes sense for you. And I think I'm going to stop there because I'm going to go down a crazy rabbit hole. I believe that you have the capability, that we have the capability of changing our minds to align with the will. And when we are aligned with the will, we have the capability of changing the genes. And that requires a passageway through the heart. Cool. Bye, guys.